Asian American teenagers overwhelmingly believe in racism, white privilege, poll shows. What the study found: 34% of Asian teens responded that they had been discriminated against in the past year because of race, compared to 25% of teenagers overall. The study showed that Asian, Black, Hispanic, and white teens had greatly different expectations for how race would shape their futures. Asian teens were generally more pessimistic about racism and privilege compared to their white counterpart. In a Washington Post Ipsos poll, more than one-third of Asian American teenagers said they had been treated unfairly because of their race in the past year. That's a lot, one-third. Asian teens and Black teens worried most about how their racial identities would shape their futures, with 41% of Asian teens and 54% of Black teens say their race might negatively impact them. Among the teenagers polled who reported being discriminated against in the past year due to their race, 60% believe their future outcomes would be worse because of their racial identity. In stark contrast, only 10% of white teens believe that their race would negatively impact them. Asian teens were overall divided about how race would impact them. 41% of Asian teens believe their racial identity would hurt them in terms of getting ahead in life. 11% believe it would help them, and the remaining 46% believe it would make no difference. Discussing whether white Americans had advantages compared to Black Americans, 78% of Asian teenagers agreed with the statement that white people benefited from white privilege. This was greater than the overall 57% of teenagers who agreed. In terms of racism at large, 68% of Asian American respondents believed racial discrimination was a major threat to their generation, compared to 85% of Black teens, 69% of Hispanic teens, and 43% of white teens. Most teenagers, about 50%, believe their generation would be more equal in their treatment of non-white Americans. About 38% believe their generation would most likely act the same as current adults. Black teenagers were the least likely to believe that their generation would improve racial discrimination. The poll was conducted by the Washington Post and market research firm Ipsos from May to June of 2021. Respondents included a random national sampling of about 1,300 teenagers between the ages of 14 to 18 who completed the survey online. The Gen Z members shared their opinions about race and privilege. Well, it so happens this morning on CBS, I saw a news story, and this comes right back to this. There was this couple, a Black couple. They had they did some work in their house and so forth, and they wanted to appraise it. So, I guess to fix things up like that and so forth. And they had the appraiser came in. The appraiser happened to be a white woman. She appraised the house. And they were like, wow, the value they got for their house is much lower than what they thought it should be. Maybe like by $250,000 or something like that. And then they have a white friend, So I guess it's good to have white friends, right? And they told the white friend about what's happening, and they asked her if she can play the role like she owns the house. And they have another appraiser come in, and they had to go through, like, they remove like all any pictures of their family, anything like that that would give it away. So they had their white friend stand in for them to have the house appraised. And lo and behold, the appraiser appraised the house much higher value. For the white friend, the same house, nothing changed except they removed pictures and so forth. But see, that's against the law. When you appraise property, you're supposed to appraise property based on the property, not based on the race of the people occupying the property. That's against federal law. So from the report, they filed a lawsuit against the appraising firm. But they were saying that what's sad about it is that when you own property in America, you're told that's how you acquire wealth, and you can transfer generational wealth. So if you have kids in the future or descendants, you can pass that down to them if you own a home or so forth. And real estate tends to, like, the value tends to go up depending where you are. If you're in the right market, it can go up regardless. You see, so here these people, this couple work hard, put money into their home and so forth, make it look good, and then they get an appraised value like this. So it should be in the CBS this morning. So right there, that's white privilege right there. I know I have another video on this channel about white privilege, and I see a number of comments from people who give, like, anecdotal comments, how they had a rough childhood, they were treated badly, and if white privilege really existed, wow, they wish that they have it. But that's not what white privilege means. People misunderstand what it means. It got nothing to do with you had a rough childhood. Here's a good example, right? Look at Britney Spears, right? She was treated badly. Okay, she had some kind of mental breakdown or what have you, right? Like maybe 14 years ago. And then they had this conservatorship or what have you, where her father was in charge of her money and everything like that. So yeah, even though she has to be a white woman, to me that's unfair, because I can't imagine anybody, in charge of my bank account, my money, tell me you could do this or you can't do this, you can do this, so forth. So yeah, but that's that. So she can't really say, well, look at me, I've been treated badly. If there was white privilege, I would have been treated. But that's not what it means. And I think people seem to misinterpret what white privilege is or what it really means. And I give the example of Britney Spears. Britney Spears, sure, she had a lot of money. I think like $50 million or something like that. And it was in a conservatorship, and her father was in charge, and she had to go to court to see she can get out of it. And she had a lot of fans because, most people never heard of something like that. Somebody controlling your life like that. You're a grown woman, like 38, 39 years old, 40 years old. And your father, most people are like, wow, are you kidding me? Your father controlling what you do? If you want to date, if you want to use birth control, if you want to do things like that. If you want to have another baby, no, you can't. Wow, and the clock is ticking on you. You know, not like a man who can have a child when he's older. If you're a woman, it's different. But that's not what. Has nothing to do with white privilege. You see, white privilege is exactly like what happened in the example that in the news I saw, where the black couple asked their white friend if she can stand in for them in her house, and then all of a sudden, when the appraiser came, the property was appraised differently. The value of it increased dramatically. See, so that's white privilege, and you can't deny it. The black people, the value of their property was depreciated for what? The same thing. The appraisers look at the same thing, what have you. Same home, same fix ups and things that they did, remodeling and so forth. So, when people say, well, white privilege doesn't exist or so forth, well, you either been in a deep sleep or in denial or what have you, because it does exist, you see, and especially in the justice system in America. Yeah, you look at some of the stuff that's going on, like the guy who did all the shooting out in Wisconsin. That's white privilege, because I can't imagine a black guy his age with a gun, with like an AR-15 going into another state, crossing state line, and killing people, and the police telling them, why didn't you go home? Go home. Walking around with a gun like that. When you consider, like, this guy, what's his name? Rice, I think his last name is Tamir Rice. He was like maybe 12 years old. He was shot to death in Ohio. And Ohio is one of the states that you can actually carry a gun in Ohio. But the police shot him without any question. They didn't even take cover. Somebody reported there was this guy with a gun. He had a play gun. And with the play gun, police showed up, came out of the car and shot him right then and there. They didn't even ask. So that's an example right there. If a white guy had a gun like that, the police more than likely would have given him an opportunity to explain what he's doing with that gun. The black boy wasn't given that opportunity. So, when you contrast the two and people say, well, there's no white privilege, yes, there is white privilege. Because the cops would have never shot a white guy who has a gun, okay? They would have risked being shot first than to shoot that white guy. That's the way it works. And for people to say, well, things like that don't exist, no. Then here's another one, too. The guy who got killed down in Georgia, right, who was jogging and he was stopped by some construction site. There was a house under construction, and a few times he would stop off, and there was a camera running there. It was videotaping, and to show him, looking around and so forth. Okay, and I bring that up because when one of the men call, they call 911, which is reserved for emergencies, and they ask, well, what's your emergency? And they say, well, there's a black man running down the street. A black man running down the street is not an emergency. I don't know in what world that is, but it's not an emergency. But in their world, it's an emergency. You see? So this black guy was running through an area where, I guess, in that particular area, and he's from that part of the state too. So, but however, that part of the state or city or wherever happens to be like mostly white. So he was going through there and he was jogging through that area. Okay. Now picture a white guy or a white man jogging through, let's say, a mostly black neighborhood, right? Is anybody gonna call the police and say there's a white man jogging through this neighborhood? No. That's not gonna happen. You know. That's white privilege, because nobody's gonna call and complain and say there's a white man jogging through a black neighborhood or an area, where you don't see much white people. That's not gonna happen. That's not gonna happen at all. And if you did call, the police might come over to charge you for abusing the 911 system. You see? And another thing too is that in those states, like where that guy was, there's construction and it's open. So people, and they had other people too in the video going in. One couple even took a piece of wood from the place. They seen in video. This guy didn't take anything. Now here in New York, where I live, if there's a construction site, it's enclosed. It's like it's fenced in, and it's usually with board, so you don't really get to. It's not like a fence. Like it's more like with a board, and usually there's like a small opening, like with a plexiglass, and you can look in for people who are curious. You can look in and you can see what's going on in there in New York. That's how it is. And I pass a lot of construction sites in New York, and they have the permit up from the city, the buildings department in the city of New York. That give them the right to do construction. You see, so in a case like that, you wouldn't have that kind of incident where some guy who's walking off the street and he walks into an open construction site and just like wandering around. No, in New York City here where I live, that's not gonna happen because it's fenced in, and it's fenced in for two reasons, like legal reasons. You don't want somebody walking there, and get hurt because it's a construction site. Things could fall, and then that person could turn around and sue. And even though they don't belong there on the construction site, chances are they will win in the lawsuit, because they don't have a right to be in there, but at the same time, you should have kept the construction site secure, that people wouldn't be able to get on it. So that's important for insurance purposes too. So here in New York, we operate quite differently. We have different laws. So you just can't walk up on a construction site like that and wander around like in the evening when nobody's working. You can't do that. It's all locked, fenced in. You see? So if that guy had lived here and he was jogging, there was no way for him to just wander around and walk around and looking around a construction site. No, that's not going to happen. You see? That's not going to happen at all. And we live in a different time now here in New York, but at one time, you go back like in the 1990s, we had an incident like Howard Beach, Bensonhurst, where black people who strayed into certain neighborhoods and ended up either being killed or so forth. I think those days are over, because now we have like New York is really much more mixed now. You still have some mostly white neighborhoods, but still you have a lot of mixtures. I took a walk. I went down to like walking through all the way down Coney Island Avenue the other day, and I see like lots of Arab people speaking, Arabic. You hear the music and all that stuff. and so forth. So you walking through that area, you're not going to find that somebody who is an Arab going to be chasing you down Coney Island Avenue because you happen to be a black person walking through the neighborhood. That's not going to happen. You know, that's not going to happen. Whereas like Howard Beach, yeah, that's how it was. You're a black person walking through there, yeah, you will have some white people chasing you. Or Bensonhurst with Yusuf Hawkins, who went to buy a car in that area, chase him, and so forth. That's how it was. You know, a lot of whites were very protective of their neighborhood, and so forth, and they wanted to maintain that status quo. But now here in New York, the way it is, you have a lot. It's changed. You have a lot more people. A lot of these neighborhoods that used to be like mostly white, they're not anymore. They're very changed. And people there are not gonna chase you because they see you walking through the neighborhood or want to know, what you're doing here and so forth. No, that's not gonna happen. Maybe there's still some pockets of that, said parts of the city, but generally speaking, no. That is not gonna happen. You see, we've come a long way from those days. Yeah. All right. Let's shut this off.